Okay, we're gonna start, y'all. We don't have microphones, so,
Which side are you putting up?
just don't televised, you can plug your computer.
I thought we were gonna share. You don't wanna share.
Well, no, Stevie was putting her stuff there. I was like,
Am I messing with something?
no, you're good.
Okay, well, I appreciate everybody being here, and, we're staff trying to figure this room. So thank you, staff, of course, and call this meeting in order. And Al Bailey, and Dave is to right. Our attorney has something to brief us on, so before we start our regular agenda,
Thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to make the board aware of the recent legislative change. There have been a lot of legislative changes that district staff will be working through in the coming weeks. There's one item that Dr. Dale and I haven't yet had an opportunity. I drafted an email. I didn't get a chance to send. But there is a change to our audit committee statute. They have made some revisions that really don't matter to us. They're changing the name of it from the audit committee to the audit selection committee. The one piece that doesn't is that for school boards, municipalities, and other entities, they are now adding a member of the audit committee to serve as the chair. One member of this body needs to be added to the audit committee who will serve as the chair. I know, it's set out in statute now. So, especially in light of the fact that our Department of Education and our legislature are really looking closely to make sure that all of our school districts are complying with all the legislative changes that are being made. I wanted to bring this to your attention, likely the next board meeting, there'll be an item that asks you all to appoint someone, like you usually do it for the board meetings, to appoint someone to serve on that committee and to serve as chair. The audit committee is scheduled to meet next Thursday. Right. And so they are, as far as I'm aware of this. They will be informed at that meeting. And we'll look to implement, I'm sure, changes to the board policy dealing with the audit committee, the other changes that are set out in statute. But I want to make you all aware of this so that you know at the next meeting that there's going to be an item, there should be an item.
Does the chair or vice chair serve as ex officio member of that committee?
right now.
No. There, yeah. I mean, there's just 10. But not as many.
There's one person who
I
and
think
she
it
knows
all.
a lot about audits.
Yeah,
She really does.
And it would be a great,
Is it, are we at 1-year term?
It doesn't say. And our
so who
current.
would define that in our policy?
And our current policy does not have a specific term for the officer. Our current chair has served the entire time we've had an audit committee, and that's been 12 years.
And how often?
Once a quarter, roughly. Yeah. Okay, thanks so
I
much.
just left that meeting. So
I
I'm
hear,
not-
I hear you say you're the voice of experience. If we do that. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so if you notice, we don't have any questions this week
But I do.
to go over. But there is Dr. Gale, requested that we submit our budget priorities, and so we have that in writing, and we're having a budget update workshop in B. I'm wondering if we want to just get that update and then go over our priorities and so forth that we brought up at that time when we talked about the budget. Is that okay?
I'm sorry, tell me again.
Okay, so first we're having an academic services update from Ms. Gregory. The second one is a budget update.
Yes.
And I'm suggesting that we talk about our budget priorities after we get that update.
Okay.
And then the other budgetary questions that we have.
I don't disturb
Fine?
that. That's fine.
And then we'll have new and continuing concerns from board members and superintendent, where do you want to,
But I do have a question regarding
the agenda, okay,
regarding for tomorrow's meeting.
for tomorrow.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And that, and it may not be able to be answered here, perhaps perhaps be answered to me later.
Okay.
I don't know if you want me to deal with it as a concern, it's not a concern, it's just really.
If it's just a question, I think we do that at the beginning of the
All
meeting,
right, that's-
talking about tomorrow night's agenda.
Southeastern Strategy, who's providing professional services for language pathology. And I noticed that they are being used at a number of our schools. And I wanted to know, what is the process by which that company is selected, and is it competitively bid? And are there other vendors available to provide that same service, or are they just the vendor of choice for the entire district? Because I noticed that we're seeing it coming from different schools as agenda items.
And there's only one that has a dollar amount, the other two don't.
So does someone have a question, answer for that? or is
I
it
can
just-
say in general, I'm not sure if there's a list, Mr. Jones, or not, but we give principals the autonomy with their budget, whether or not they contract with an outside provider for speech language services, or whether we have, they put some of their staffing plan into providing a speech language person. It just
So
depends
we have
on.
the option to
the
either
principal.
hire a vendor or
Correct.
hire staff.
Correct,
To
yes.
meet their needs.
Correct, whatever the principal feels like is best. And we do the same thing with like custodial work and other areas where principals have the autonomy of, in lieu of hiring X number of custodians, they can contract those services out to Kelly Services or
That doesn't quite answer his question about, do we
as far as a
have
list of
a list
providers.
to choose from, or is it just one, or?
Speech language, Alan.
All right, so Southeastern is pretty much the company we use that when we contract out those services. The problem is there's a shortage of them, okay? We have a hard time finding them. And then we sometimes get in a situation where one school will have 100 students in a caseload, and we don't need a full-time, we just need one and kind of a half. So there's all these different scenarios that requires to have to contract it sometimes. Give you an example, when I was at Childs, which was the largest school in the area at the time, I advertised, couldn't find anybody. So I had to contract out those services. After about 2 years, that person ended up switching over and becoming one of our employees. So that's the world of speech path. And every school's got a little bit different. So not to confuse you, but let's take one school that says, let's say Bond. Let's say Bond has 100 students on caseload. We actually have to look at what those students need in their caseload to determine if it justifies another half person too. Because some of it's just articulation, some of it's language, some of it's consult. So every situation's a little bit different. But for the most part, there's one company that we contract services from.
And you say that they don't have the wherewithal to meet the entire needs of the district?
We can't find enough of those folks. It's just like with our school psychologists. Our therapists are hard to find because, frankly, they make more money on the private side of it. We have some benefits now that somebody that hangs their own shingle doesn't have. But there are some areas when we deal with therapies that we have to contract out.
And I know that they're not workshopping this, but isn't there a speech pathology major at Florida State School of Communication?
Absolutely. Yep. We're on top as soon as they come out. My niece graduated from there. She immediately got a job for $30,000 more than we pay in our district. And our pay rate's not bad. I'm just saying that's
They're very solid.
how it works.
But in continuing the conversation just a little bit further, site managers determine the needs of the students, right?
Right.
And so that need is based on how students are
Right.
tested, the IEPs, that kind of thing. So-
Yes, and they'll call me, they'll call out here and say, we need another half person, and then myself, and who was Martha Fletcher, who's now Kathy Shields, will get involved. Actually, our ESE director right now, the new one that we just hired, she's a speech pathologist. And that's what she's done, so she's very well versed in it, and she can look at it, see if we can need to address those needs, or if they can do it with the current staff.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I can add in to respond to your specific question about competitive bidding requirement. Under state board rule, this is an area of professional services, an area that is exempt from competitive bidding requirements. A number,
Is that germane just to school districts?
yeah, well, this is in our state, it's in the state board rule for educational entities. There may be something
Okay.
similar for other entities.
Right, yeah.
But it's in 6A-1.012, for an 11, and it provides for exemption for professional services, including health services being one, attorney services being another, any number of, a range of different kinds of professional services are.
That's good too.
Thank you for asking the question. Okay.
I have another one. I have one too, actually. I sent it kind of late. My apologies. Probably for everybody else. But it kind of goes along the same lines of what Daryl's asking about. Mine was on the 223 agency Inc. contracted Lively, which has been since moved to consideration. But it's a pretty high price tag for a company that seems to. I think we have a lot of companies in the marketing, PR, all of that. And so I was just wondering, same thing. I was like, do we have to put this out to bid? And the answer was no under state statute. But apparently there was, I think Shelley had, gone above and beyond and had gotten some more quotes. So I was just asking to see, if we could compare. I think in the past, this company contracted with Lively, but under several different names. And so it was, had that illusion of breaking up a contract. So now it appears to be under one name, from what I understand. Is that right, Shelley? And so I just think it's good practice that we look at other bid if there's somebody that provides the same service. And apparently, I think she did so. So I was just wondering if we could get some follow-up on that.
You want to give us a quick report on that, Shelley?
Sure. And I'll go back to last year when I got to Lively, there had been, over the past couple of years, lots of money spent on different advertising. Previous administrators spent, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. Governance was one. And so when I came in, our first priority was to do a website, was to redo the website. So we contracted with, at the time it was App Innovators. That was one of the companies, and we did that. They did a fantastic job. And then as we worked our relationship with them, we found out that they could do some other services for us. So it was a company we were familiar with, and we kind of added on. At that point, we were ready to take the leap into social media and doing some digital advertising, and so we used them. And at that time, yes, there was a different name, but we worked with June in the district to make sure that we were doing what we thought was right, not by trying to break up contracts, just we started one and then we needed some other services. And so this year we brought under one of their company's name, which is the 223 agency, and we put everything that we think, as of this point, that we will need for this upcoming year. Not to say that we won't decide down the road that we need some more videos done or some other types of advertising, but at this point, we feel like we've done a PTSA to cover everything that we think we need the 223 agency to do for us this year, and that includes maintaining the website, some video editing, our social media, our digital advertising. So we've done them for this year with that PTSA. But going back to when we originally looked at this, one of the reasons we went with them to start with was that they were so much cheaper than everyone else. When I originally went out to get quotes for building a whole new website, and if you've gone to Lively's, we essentially have a different website for every single program. So it's not just like one shell. We have hundreds of pages within our website.
Are they local?
Are they what?
Are they local?
Yes, they're local. It's a local guy, graduated from Lincoln High School. As a matter of fact, I think Christina's used him with some of the stuff that DEO's done. The Chamber's used him, but we liked his price because I couldn't afford $200,000 for a new website. And so when we went with him originally, he was well under what we got from some of the other companies. And because he's local, he knows our school, he's been in there, he did some work prior to me coming to Lively. We've just submitted a PTSA with everything that we think he's going to be doing for us for this year.
I saw your bill.
I saw your social media.
Said there were some other quotes though.
There were other
this
quotes,
year.
yeah. I think, well, Oppenheim's was the exact same this year as it was the first year we did that out, and I think his came in 72,000 without a website, without touching anything on their website. And then there were some other larger companies that when they started going, 100,000 plus, I immediately said we can't do that.
Well, I know that like Saks does a lot, I mean, in Concord District, did you reach out to Western or Saks Media or, gosh, there's so many of them, are there others, or was it just Oppenheim and
It was Oppenheim, it was Dustin Rivest, I I believe one of our aviation guy, his wife works for Saks, so we kind of told him some of the things that we needed. The website was our big thing, so we wanted to go with somebody that could do the website and what we wanted, and then also curtail some of the other things in the video production. So originally when we went back, when I started this in 2018, I could pull everything. I didn't have time today because I just got a call right before this. And I was able to pull the one from Oppenheim immediately. I can go back and pull some of the other quotes we got. But at this point, we do feel like that this company, because they have built the website, and they did that a year plus ago, to continue with the continuity of services that they provided for that website and maintaining it for us.
Okay, thank you very much.
I have one more question about the appointments that we got. So, and I know I'm the new kid on the block, but do the appointments come to us at the time that they're passed out? Or is it possible we know that information? The final appointments to be made? Personnel, yeah,
Oh,
because the personnel list here does not include the remaining principals I know in my district. So how is that done? Is that just done, is that the way it's done? We get the list at the meeting, or do we get the list in advance?
The list is usually put on, it's in advance, I'm not, of the meeting, I'm not sure, it depends on the
Because the only time I
situation.
got it was at the last one, we got that
In advance.
right before we went into it. And I just want to know, is that the process? Because I'm in the new kid. This is my first appointment season.
So, many times it's done, maybe a day, just depending on the timing, a day or two in advance. It's usually not the whole week, because there's a lot of people to sort through, and a lot of schools to sort through, and a lot of positions to sort through. And we're not finished, I think we're adding a couple more for tomorrow, and then we're still waiting on school grades to come out to finish. You know, they may come out tomorrow, they may come out Wednesday. I don't know when they're coming out, but we have to wait on school grades to absolutely finish everything.
So we may be getting on the next meeting.
At the school level, yeah.
Okay, not the meeting tomorrow, but the meeting.
23rd.
The 23rd.
Okay, any more questions about the agenda for tomorrow? All right, great, well, we'll move on to our workshop agenda, and the first one is academic services.
Good afternoon, superintendent, school board chair, school board members. Today I am before you just to give you a brief academic services update related to the testing season results. And you have a manila folder in front of you. It includes some handouts. The first one is just a refresher on how our school grades are calculated. We have not received our school grades, and for those of us who have maybe been around more than since November, it may feel like it's later than normal, because it is later than normal. Typically, by now, we have received school grades. In the past, there were statutory requirements that all student test scores were to be returned at the individual student level by June 8th. And typically, we get preliminary school grades from the department about a week after those individual student score reports. However, when the state returned to paper-based testing, what the state also did is change the reporting timeline that is required by the department. So no longer is the department required to return student individual reports by June 8th. They now have until June 30th to report those individual student scores, which means that, as you are aware, that those individual student scores are aggregated at the school level to determine the school grade. So if the student individual score reports are not due until June 30th, you can see how then it pushes back everything else, which I think is what gets to School Board Member Jones's question. We are still waiting for school grades. Last Monday, we received an email from the department. Before they release school grades, they have an accountability corrections process that occurs. It's usually a multi-week process. They have shortened it to 1 week. It closes today at 5 p.m. So our schools received on Friday, the 28th, I believe, they received the individual student reports. They've been scrambling Our district staff, in terms of TIS, they've been scrambling, uploading student score reports to student academic files electronically. Parents can go and look at their individual student reports. However, we have not received school grades because we are in the process of accountability corrections, which closes at 5 p.m. today. Now, based on those corrections, and that's statewide for all developmental schools and districts, they will receive those corrections from each of the 72 or so entities, and then they will apply those corrections. They will either accept them or reject them, and apply them to the file, and then use that file to generate school grades, which is a lot of words to say. That I think it's probably, I'm going to say it and then as soon as I say it, I'm going to be made a liar, but I don't think it's possible that we'll get school grades tomorrow. I think it's more than likely if the application closes at 5 p.m. today, if they have staff working all through the night, they'll do some they'll do some matching, they'll check things out. Sure, tomorrow morning they could potentially, or tomorrow afternoon they could potentially release school grades, but more than likely it would be no earlier than Wednesday, give or take. Yes, sir.
Who do you describe as the 72 entities? Is that counties?
That's the 67 counties plus developmental lab schools. So FSU lab, FSU High, FAM, DRS, UF, FAU, they all operate as independent school districts, Florida Virtual School. So all 67 counties plus those entities are required to do an accountability corrections process right now, with it closing today at the end of business. Once that accountability corrections occurs, then the state will release what are called preliminary school grades. And that's typically what we see in the past in mid-June, which is why in the past perhaps we've seen many appointments at the end of June, and then this year we didn't even have individual school reports until the end, student reports until the end of June. And so now we are in the process, our principals are working with their families, and we have completed the process of generating secondary report cards, because remember, EOCs are part of the school grade, the course grade for students. So we've been doing some work at the district level.
I have a question, and I haven't looked at this enough to probably ask an intelligent question, but the level 1, level 2, you have the range for all the grades, and then you have low, middle, high. How does that interact with the school grade?
Sure, so may I take your question in a second? I'll do this and then get there. So if I could draw your attention to this handout, the chart, it says 2018 school grades overview. Each of the blue titles is a component of school grades. English language arts, math, science, social studies, graduation rate, and acceleration, and college and career readiness. ELA and math have 3 components within them. They have an ELA proficiency, and that's the percentage of students who are 3 and above. So when you see a school grade that says 34% of their students are high performing or proficient, that means 34% of their students are level 3 or above. The next category is learning gains. And what that is that's all students who have shown a learning gain in their assessment backwards mapped to the previous year's assessment. So Jillian Gregory is a 4th grader at Kate Sullivan Elementary School. I took a test in 3rd grade in the state, and I took it in Miami, and I moved up here. My 3rd grade performance is mapped to my 4th grade performance. And if I've made what the state defines as a gain, I'm an affirmative in this category. I count in this category. And then, let's say that in 3rd grade, when I was in Miami-Dade, I scored a level 1. And then I moved up here and I was at Kate Sullivan, and I just soared. I was a level 4. Because I was a level 1 in 3rd grade, I am also in the bottom 25% learning gains. So what the state is saying is, it's super important that everybody reads on grade level. It's super important that everybody makes a learning gain. But those students who are in the bottom 25% at every school, those students also need to demonstrate growth, and they have their own school grade component. So to your question, Ms. Wood, if you go to page 15 in the handouts, what you've noticed on table 4 is that each of the level 1 and 2 score ranges are further defined as either low, medium, or high for level 1, or low to high, level 2. So for a student who scores a level 3, in my example in Miami-Dade, let's say that Jillian Gregory in Miami-Dade in 3rd grade scored a 250. I would have been a low level 1. But when I went to Kate Sullivan, I became, in this example, a 267 in 4th grade. Because I went from a 250 to a 267, I am a learning gain. So it's not just some random number. These tables define what a learning gain is for both the learning gains overall, but also for the bottom 25% of students. So you have 2 tables before you, table on page 15, table 4, and on page 18, table 8. Those are the tables that are tied to both FSA and math and ELA learning gains. So the student scores a 257 in 3rd grade, or 254 in 3rd grade in ELA, a 260 in 3rd grade math, then the student has to make learning gains in grade 4, and that score in grade 4 is backward mapped to their performance in grade 3, and that is what counts as a learning gain for the purposes of school grades in these categories.
So learning gains is where you really find your metric that lets you know if your strategy is working.
Indeed. So the
Whatever
idea.
that plan was that they provide at the beginning of the year to have the grades to increase.
So I think.
In learning gains, is it in learning gains that you know that the strategy is working?
I think, yes, it's certainly one way of looking at it, right? So in particular, as you get old, you move through the grade levels. If you receive, as a secondary individual, if the 9th grade student is a level 1 student in 9th grade, in 6 months, between August to March, when they sit for their test, essentially, you're asking, the school is being asked by school grades to move that student from a level 1 to a level 3. That's a lot of growth in 6 months. But certainly, I think it's reasonable for us to say, has the student made gains? Have they gone from a low level 1 to a mid level 1? Or have they gone from a mid level 1 to a low level 2? The state set it up so that if a student earns a low level 1 in 3rd grade, as long as they meet their learning gains requirements, by the time they exit 8th grade, they will be proficient. And that is the ultimate goal.
So if they go from 3rd grade to low level 1 and they go to a middle level 1, it's counted as in the 4th grade, it's counted as a learning gain.
Yes, ma'am.
But
But if they stay at let's say they stay mid level 1 in 5th grade, they're not learning gains. They have to go to a high level 1.
you have to progress each.
Yes, and there are some pretty significant leaps, right? So not all learning gains are the same. The cognitive complexity requires a student to go from a level 1 to a level 2. That's a leap. And they go from a level 2 to a level 3, that's a leap. So much of the instructional leadership conversations that are undertaken in our district really talk about that cognitive complexity. How are we supporting students where they are, and how do we grow them to demonstrate what they can know and do in a deeper way so they can score more proficiently on the FSA?
Any questions? Quick one about accountability corrections. Once we get our corrections into DOE, can they get back to us our grades for our schools, or will we just be lumped in with everybody else? Is it first come, first served basis, or?
Unfortunately, no, everyone has the same deadline, and they do not, so even though, for example, we messaged out to our principals on Monday of last week, this is the window, and I have full confidence everyone has submitted. In fact, I've been texting and emailing last week with various individuals. The state only releases preliminary school grades one time. And so and that is how it is also with individual score reports. Everything is released at one time. And so, in years past, some years we've gotten 4 hours worth of notice, and some years we found out from the press.
Yeah.
And so that's happened recently. And so, we have, there's a website you go to, and we refresh it every 15 minutes. So we'll start tomorrow morning, we'll start refreshing every 15 minutes, knowing it's probably gonna be Wednesday, until we can get the data set brought down.
We got questions from constituents. Was the article hit the newspaper, the Democrat, or what's really going on, that kind of thing.
And typically there's no change to the process from the department in terms of individual student score reports, in terms of report cards. And there has been no change to our process. What has changed is that the state pushed back reporting requirements from June 7th to June 30th. That is significant, because in the past, we would mail home report cards before the 4th of July holiday, right?
Yeah.
And there's some sort of like mental, we psychologically, now we're saying you're not gonna get anything until after July 4th, right?
Because you're not going on vacation, I don't have your report card yet.
Right, and so you're not going to visit. And so there has, and the state has moved to that date because of the return to paper-based testing.
Okay, thank you very much.
As a side note, did you guys see, I don't know if I sent it to you, there's a great article in the Tampa Bay Times on, I think it was Tuesday this week, Florida school grades are really measuring family income on data. Really great.
Curriculum.
Yes, I can see that.
And it was a
Yeah.
And she talked to y'all a little bit about the different boxes. You have that one sheet that shows you the boxes at the different levels. And I told y'all before that I'm trying to lobby, we're lobbying for an 8th box to be added to the elementary school grade. It didn't work out this year. I'm gonna try to meet with the governor's staff. Jessica Janusewicz is gonna try to get us a meeting. And the 8th box would include 3rd grade retentions, because I think that's an important piece and component of how successful or not successful elementary schools are, is that 3rd grade retention number based solely on their FSA score. It says that any child that scores a level 1 on 3rd grade FSA has to be retained unless they complete a summer program in the Reading Academy that we're doing now. And that creates a portfolio, and there's some testing to be done after a summer program. But if you just use that FSA data, it really would help some of our schools that are falling on the bubble of grades, either a C or a D, or a B and a C every year. I know they'll be reluctant because it would really help in our favor, the school grades, but it doesn't hurt to try.
Well, I think it'd be clear if you said the promotion rate, because you're wanting points. for-
Promotion rate, yes. Yes.
You know, if 87% get promoted, you want 87 points, right?
Correct.
Anything else?
Yes, I don't know what the policy is, because again,
No, you're, it's okay. You don't say.
get on the block, I'm a rookie. But what's the method by which we're communicating with the parents? Because all that I know until now, I've got from Facebook posts from different schools that talk about what they believe their activity or gains have been. Then I also get the story from Tallahassee Reports that talks about the different grades. And so clearly, we're not the only proprietors of this information, but at what point beyond right now is a process by which this information is communicated to school board members regarding our different facilities and schools, or provided some context and explanation by which we're able, because some schools in my district, I got an email from 4th grade, I got no email from the other schools in my district. Then I saw posts from RAW and other schools, so everybody's not communicating this information by some standard protocol, and I would think that we should be managing that message in some way.
I agree, and then this year, I think because of the lateness of the release of this information, some schools took it upon themselves to kind of do their own thing and they analyze their own student scores and are predicting. We don't want to do that, because we don't want to be wrong. What we want to have is accurate information that's been verified and vetted by the Department of Education before we go public with anything related to school grades. So I think it's a conversation for our principals to have, and as soon as that email went out from 4th grade, excited about some of their results, it was really premature.
And just so as a way of work, we typically, on the academic services staff, will work with the superintendent and Mr. Catley to contact you as soon as we receive school grade. But we don't, there's no, the process.
But this isn't school grades. This isn't school grades.
This is just the process.
This is just the process, right? But there's still information reported to the schools about what progress has been made.
The scores, the raw
grades.
scores.
So whatever gains that are made, relative to the district, if there's public information regarding our Leon County schools, the district is responsible for managing that narrative, particularly as it relates to reforming board members of that narrative. And I just think that I've had to count on I've had to count on other sources other than the district to inform me.
I think it was on the DOE
But
website.
we don't have any of that gain information. We don't have it. It's not like we have it, we're holding it. We don't have any of that information. So all we have is the raw scores that were released. Now, what we could do, I guess, because they released each school's ELA and math achievement level, right? We could have done something around that, but we usually don't do that either because it's not matched students. So the numbers, that you see some numbers here, but then you're gonna see new numbers when the matched students, matched meaning they were a student at that school in February during FTE, and October during FTE, and in February during FTE. So there's other dynamics that play into it.
So how do they make so I guess if the media is saying that Deer Lake did a great job compared to the other middle schools, how then do they take that information from whatever source they get it from to make that information public?
So what I think, so there's two different questions there. So what school principals do is they go on the DOE website and they look to see, so Mr. Jackson's email, I read through it today, and it was along the lines of, we are the lead in all middle school math and learning gains and things like that. So what he's done is he's looked at his performance, and then he's looked at others, and he's made that assertion. When it comes to the Democratic or the news, I can't speak to how they do it, but we as officially don't have a comment or a press release until we receive official results. Again, because it's unmatched. So right now, in the data that the schools have is all individual student reports. And so, but not all students count in school grades, only those students who are matched and in attendance during testing. So students who enroll in December are not part of a school grade, but students who enrolled in September are part of a school grade because they were matched in October and February. So what the schools have right now is they have their unmatched now. What they can do is they can go down to the registrar's office, pull the list of students who've enrolled, and cross off the kids who are the students who are not matched, and then calculate from there. But they don't actually have access to that information for other schools. So as we move towards the next week or so, we will receive from the state official, these are who your matched students are, these are how we calculate the grades, and these are your percentages proficient in learning gains. And they are generally different slightly because matched and unmatched students can sway 3, 4, 5% either way.
So I think, if I can chime in just a minute, I think what Daryl, this might help clarify it, and I had some question too, was the first I saw of it was the link from the Democrat, and they give a link to the chart where you can then pull up by county, by school, and I went straight to third grade reading scores, and I could see who was 30% or less, and I could see who was 80% or above, just like everybody else in town. But that information came to us from the Democrat and not from the school district itself. So what I'm hearing, we're hesitant to release and say, hey guys, here it is, because there's going to be more calculations going on. But yet, as a board member, I think what you're saying, Daryl, is we would like to know that link and that information prior to it. But the Democrats on top, I mean, they're like, and you can go right there, and I can see what school was it, a 28% third grade reading level, and it was, but that was information I got from a link.
And those are unmatched.
My question is, being able to look at the link and determine your school's grade is one thing, but in determining that school's grade, if you determine it erroneously and it is out there, we, the system, us, are, I guess, the ones entrusted with that information, are we not?
Yes.
And so at this point, it just looks like the confusion, the conflict, the feelings of who's on first, who's pitching, what's really happening here. Well, we have parents, and so just listening for.
So I think what would be helpful in my hearing is that we have a way of working when the state releases official things, but when they release unofficial results, things like third grade, which is released at the end of May, or others, we would like us to communicate those to you through Mr. Heavy or with Dr. Gale.
So
I can do that.
because if it would be, and Alba,
We're in a workshop, we're out.
Alba's right, that's my thing, right? I found out about it through the Democrat and other sources and Facebook, and I got nothing from the district that said, Daryl, this is the link that's been made available, you'll see frequent references to this information. We'll have opportunity to pair, this is not you, we'll have opportunity to pare this down and talk about it further in greater depth when we come together with something. But there was nothing. So I left out there and I said, so I started doing this like the public would do. I went to different schools on Facebook and see who had something to say. And because I've liked so many of our schools, when those schools that chose to share information, I was made aware that way, but nothing. So that's my only concern.
So as prior practice, we have not done anything officially or presentation to the board until school grades have come out with the accurate numbers that are matched. Now, we can certainly go back moving forward when these raw data is released, because she's gonna get it the same time we get it, right? So they're gonna see it, something's in a post, so we don't even have a heads up. It isn't like DOE gives it to us a day in advance, 2 days in advance, right? They just say, oh, by the way, it's being released, right? So in the future, we can go back to the beginning with this raw student data and give you whatever it is you want, as soon as we get it, and not wait for school grades and then break down everything. But we've never had this discussion where, I'm not saying this wasn't important, but it wasn't in depth enough to really have a conversation about what went well at this school or not that school or whatever, because we just don't know yet.
And I think it's great. I like that idea. I'd like to just look at the data with a big old caveat saying, this hasn't been corrected yet, and it hasn't been matched yet. And so don't be posting stuff about how good your schools did because.
You need to, I think it's important that we manage our message. And I know you continually talk a great deal about the importance of marketing, but a part of that is also managing our message both externally and internally.
That was this commercial, you could give you great information, you could do it.
Okay, so with that being said,
Thank you.
is there more for your workshop? Okay, great,
Can
thank
I
you.
ask a follow-up question on that real quick?
Yes.
One piece of information I think we're all anxious for is just kind of view the possibility of it being handed over to the Oak Ridge, handed over to the state. When will we know that?
When we receive preliminary school grades from the state.
All right.
But
Are you
so
have
we'll-
any indicators from the reads?
No. What I would say is that we are anxiously awaiting to hear from the state on that. They sent us an email a week ago or a memo a week ago telling us to be prepared to go to the state board in terms of VEO. We're going to do our due diligence, and what will more than likely happen is the superintendent will be notified first. And then what I've taken notes, we'll do a communication plan. We'll loop in School Board Member Jones, since it's his district first, and then School Board Member Wood, and then we'll call everyone else, and I'll get staff to work with me on that. But I think too, but please know that we may be getting it at the same time the press gets it.
Okay, thank you. We could get the raw scores though now.
Yes.
That'd be pretty, that would be.
So I'd say we're cautiously optimistic. When you say being turned over, it's not turned over to state. We have to pay that money to the external operator to come in and advise, to act as a consultant, basically. We pay them the $350,000 consultant fee, the contract we entered into in the spring. But we're cautiously optimistic that none of us will know. So we're waiting. Bated breath.
Okay. Next is our budget function.
As I have a meeting, come on up. I have a meeting with Mr. Hogan from CHP at 4, so I want to go ahead and say a few words to you all before Naomi and Kim, y'all talk a little bit about your budget concerns. We just added an agenda item today that talks about health insurance. And over the last several weeks since our last meeting, I've had a chance to do a lot of reflecting. I've heard from a number of employees, and I feel like there's some bad information out there. And I've said from the time I was a school principal, that other than protecting our children and our employees from harm, job two is morale. And it's protecting the morale of our people. And I strongly believe that. And I also strongly believe that as a business decision, the recommendation I made at the last board meeting to save the $2 million and to slightly increase some of the co-pays was the right thing to do. I really believe as a business decision it is. But I'm definitely afraid it may be a morale buster. And at the end of the day, I don't want that. I just don't. And so what I've made it, that coupled along with the fact that, we talked a little bit about having a health reimbursement account. We received a letter from CHP. That's why I'm meeting with their president, that if we went the direction of setting up a health reimbursement account, that the deal was off, we couldn't offer that plan, which is concerning. And we're going to talk through that. Okay, so me thinking about the timing, about the impact, potential impact it can have from his folks and from other employees, because the ones that are affected have also now talked to the ones who really are going to benefit from the savings, and they're all confused. There's a lot of confusion out there. So tomorrow I'm going to recommend that we change course and that we go with the 4.75% increase for this year. And then we have a chance to better educate our employees, that this may come back again if it's an option, that we better educate our employees. And then we also talk about the telemedicine, the Amwell, and those other options in lieu of going to the emergency room or in lieu of going to emergency care. And because at some point, I think we're going to get to where we have to play that card.
So
real quick. The other thing is once we play that card, we can't play it again. So maybe it's better that if health insurance goes up next year 7%, 8%, 9%, we go, look, we play it then. Because at the end of the day, it's going to go up every year. They're not going to say healthcare went down 2%, 3%, 8%. You follow me? And I just think, and I apologize if I'm putting you all in a bad position or a bad spot, but having gotten some feedback, even as limited as it is, and I think a lot of people still don't know what they don't know. And as strongly as I believe that it's the right business decision, I feel just as strong that it could potentially do a lot of harm to the morale, and none of us want that. We're all here to take care of our people, right? That's the bottom line. No one's doing this because we're seeing the almighty dollar and this could go to raises. And sure, we would love that, but not at the expense of our folks and them feeling like they're not in a good place. So I'll entertain, if you have questions now. I moved it it's on consideration for tomorrow night.
So what does that require, a motion to reconsider?
So we'll move to adopt, I guess.
So my computer is not working, so I can't look at it to see what it says.
So we'll get her opinion.
If it's not, if there's not a motion to consider, which would have to be by somebody here on the prevailing side, superintendent is bringing a new recommendation, which I would recommend say, rescind the prior action. Some language to negate the prior action that the board took.
Because it was action taken.
And then to approve this recommendation. But I haven't seen it. So we'll work through it.
So you're going to talk to Mr. Hogan now, and you don't see him changing?
Well, I'm going to talk. I have some concerns with how they've acted as an organization in communicating with us and with other people. I have some concerns about some of those things. I also had concerns about them saying that if we offered the reimbursement account, that the deal was off, basically, then they wouldn't honor that deal. That doesn't make any sense to me. If we have a $40 million deal with your company, what does it matter if we want to put aside a couple $100,000 for a reimbursement account to help our employees who are most affected by reoccurring expenses, right? That logic doesn't make sense. Because at the end of the day, what if the board decided, you know what, we're going to do what the state of Florida does. The board's going to pay 95% of every employee's health insurance, right? What if we went that route? Would you still say, well, the deal's off? it just doesn't make any sense, because we don't all pay 95%. We pay 80% for some and 60% for others, for you all. So I'm gonna talk to him about that and say, look, if we do revisit this, and I don't wanna sever, our relationship is too, we need them, they need us, I mean, and I think we need them probably more than they need us. But to have a conversation with him about some of the dialogue and some of the things that happened,
So does that mean you're not gonna be here for a budget discussion, except you're saying you're leaving?
I'm meeting with him in 5 minutes, and I had no choice. I saw your list of items that you laid out. What I've instructed, and Naomi, is we're still crunching numbers. We just reached the end of the fiscal year on June 30th. So the way the process works, we budget out all this money, right? The 324 million, I think, last year. We budget all that out. Then at the end of the fiscal year, we rake all of our acorns back up into a pile and say, okay, this is what we budgeted, this is what we have left, all right? And then this is the 3% we're required by statute to keep an unrestricted fund balance. And then what above that 3% threshold do we have that addresses is by priority some of these issues, whether we want all the money to go to employees, or we want some of it to go to hire more counselors at the school, or we want some of, for us to have that conversation. I honestly, if we end up with, and I don't know that we will, because we pushed a lot of money down the schools. Not only with the increase of the safety officers and that expense, we hired security monitors, we gave teachers a 4% raise last year. I mean, we spent, what, 15 million? And we didn't get a whole lot of new money from the state. That 15 million, a lot of the money was just money we cut in other places to push down to our people. And we're not in a place right now financially to say, okay, well, we have 3% plus $1 million. We have 3% plus $1.5 million. We're not there yet. We'll get there sometime later this month. But I think this conversation is just in general, like I'd love to go back to the minimum wage. I'd love to go back and say, okay, we're going to move our minimum wage from 11 to 11.50, and give all of our blue collar employees a 50-cent increase, which would cost about $2 million. And if you gave the teachers a 50-cent increase, it's again about $2 million. So that costs $4 million, right? So it's that's kind of where, because I feel we're in a good place is what we've done to help our schools with the behavior specialists at elementary, the full-time deans at the middle schools. I feel like the money, if there's any, and I don't know if there is, I'm hoping there is, but heaven forbid, we may be a little less than 3%. I don't think so, because I think we were thoughtful in our intentions about how we allocated that money. But it's just basically to hear what your thoughts and priorities are.
I'm confused a little bit, and I probably can talk to you a little bit later on, because you got to get to your 4 o'clock meeting right now. But with your statement earlier about withdrawing the information about insurance, this is that information that came from the committee, a committee that was pulled together, right? And they offered a different plan than you proposed. Am I right? I'm on the same page? And so
They recommended in a closed vote
Uh-huh.
to stay with the plan that we were currently on. Yes, and accept with a 4.75% increase.
Okay.
And what I recommended was an amended plan that did not include the income. It had a decrease, especially for our families, because now our family rate's going to go from 800 to 850. Had we gone with the other plan, it would have actually gone from 800 down to 750. So it would have decreased. So there's just so much. It's just.
There's it's sort of the way, we'll talk about tomorrow night, but it's sort of the lesser of the, do we take care of the ones who need the most? Right. Or do we?
And the ones that you've received, some correspondence from, they've talked to other people who are actually going to benefit. Well, those people that are going to benefit don't know any better because it all happened so fast. CHP didn't get us the numbers until late. We moved before the committee. It all happened, bam, 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 bam. Yeah, it was, in hindsight's hindsight. But I want all of us and our employees to be in a good place when that happens. And I don't think fighting with them and going back and forth with any of our 3 unions it's not healthy for anybody. You know, and we just know that those are our dollars that will not be back in the unrestricted fund balance. And that's okay. So, all right.
Okay, so be ready for the report, and then, I know, well, we can also talk about this. We don't know. Go ahead, Drew.
Well, I thought what we would do is just kind of go through some of what, as Roseanne mentioned, we have our next budget committee meeting coming up on Wednesday.
Before you start, I just have a question. All right, there's a CFO direct report to the superintendent.
Yes.
So this coming Wednesday, we have our second budget committee meeting, and I wanted to kind of go through some of the items that we took away from the first meeting with the committee that we costed out, because some of them line up with what we saw and what you all put forward as priorities. So I just kind of wanted y'all to see, first of all, where the budget committee was kind of overlapping with some of your priorities already. And then I thought we could go through the list that was provided, because we didn't have a long time to look at it. I think we had like 30 minutes with it before we came to the meeting. I know. So if that works with everyone, we can go forward. But based on the last budget committee meeting, one of the concerns that the committee brought forward was the substitute budget. There was concern that there wasn't enough funding.
I apologize. I'm gonna say it yet again. I'm new to this process. Who's the budget committee?
The budget committee is it's a committee that's formed of members across the school district that are coming forward to kind of put forward proposals for possible new funding initiatives. If there's additional fund balance available, the committee can put forward ideas to the superintendent for inclusion in the budget.
So, and this is not about, my concern is not about you. So, the budget committee has informed the budget before the school board does?
They are giving input from the different groups, like teachers, there, Title I's there, Les was there, everybody's there saying, if we had our way, this would be something that we would like. And then I went there, and I mentioned at the last board workshop, to get me your budget priorities, because I would try to represent what the board said, and then we decided to make this meeting that workshop so we could actually talk about it.
Right.
So what I'll do after Thursday meeting, and we're taking notes now, is to say, board members are interested in this. Now, the final say, honestly, is the superintendent recommends the budget, and the board decides
Right.
ultimately on.
And this is just my own observation, but a new set of eyes to the process. The board sets policy and ratifies the budget. Because of that being our principal responsibility, I would think that we would, in some way, be far more involved. It's almost, if we talk about the separation of powers, the balance of powers in government, right, the executive branch, what I would describe as a legislative branch. And as a legislative branch that provides that checks and balances in government, particularly when we have an elected superintendent and not an appointed superintendent, our involvement or knowledge or participation in the budget process as a person, as in that legislative process, being representative of the persons that we are elected to represent, then our input cannot be cavalier or casual, because that is our elected authority. So I'm just concerned about how this. I mean, I know this process certainly predates me.
Well, it's changed with superintendents.
Okay.
I think last year there wasn't a budget committee, right? There wasn't a budget committee, Dawn. I complained about it, kind of like you're complaining right now, like, what's the process? When do we get to picking our ideas? So it did start a little earlier this year, it did form a committee, which I appreciate. And so we're kind of feeling our way through this, Daryl, and I agree with you. After we're through with this season, we have a new CFO. I think the board could come back as we go through this process and say, next year, let's do it a little differently. And we're, you know,
Okay.
so this is just, like I said, this is the first time we've got a budget committee in a long time to even ask. And,
Right, we're kind of feeling our way through the process, but we definitely are open to suggestions and we'll continue to improve.
I just don't want, you know, I wanna know, because because I like each one of the five of us has a vote in this. With those things that matter to us,
and my personal opinion is we ought to set out our budget priorities way back, like, you know, January, February, so it's percolating the whole time. But we're listening to our groups, like, you know, what are our people saying?
I think that's important too.
What's DAC, what's Title I community saying, you know, what are the teachers saying?
And I almost feel like, I mean, if Daryl, to your point, we haven't had any of this discussion until Roseanne started pushing it, why are we not involved in the budget? So I think she was the first one I heard, you know, that, hey, you're right, we need to have more of an input, but I feel like where we are today, and I'm especially disappointed in Super, I feel like this is a fruitless conversation about everything, to be honest with you. I feel like, we're late in the game, and none is fault, it's very unfortunate, the whole situation is the way it is today, but where we are today, I almost feel like this is our chance, but this is not about 1920, this is about 2021. I mean, I feel like what we're talking about today should be a year, we should be talking now about what's gonna happen a year down the road. It's too late for us coming here, it's completely too late.
I don't think so.
We're building the budget still, and that's why your priorities would be listed. Y'all choose what your priorities that you want to fund to continue. I mean, we don't have a budget that's set in stone. We're still building that
But
budget.
it should be like an ongoing conversation, as if it's what you're talking about. It shouldn't just be like, oh, it's time.
Yeah.
We should be ongoing, constantly talking about where we want to go, what we want to fund, that.
Right, so I feel like where we are now, we should be talking about this for the future. If it's not a year, 3 months, 6 months, you know, whatever it is, but we're done looking back, you know, it's gotta move forward, but I do feel like this could be time better spent with superintendent, not just 3 months, we can go ahead.
Why don't we get the overview from you all, and at least let me hear, since I'm going to the meeting on Thursday to represent the board, and then, but, you know, it's no final say, because ultimately, we get to decide, it's the budget, right? That's our prerogative, that's the superintendent's recommendation.
I would like to,
I'm on the budget committee.
and Madam Chair, I'm comfortable with that, right? But I would like that meeting publicly noticed, so if anybody else wants to attend, even if they don't participate.
Has
they
it-
just-
It is, it's been in the newspaper since Friday.
Okay, so, because
So you could come.
and I don't know what it is, I haven't received any notice about that, but I'd be delighted to come, just to hear the conversation, what different voices are saying.
Yeah, I publicly noticed it.
No, that's to inform the public, but we haven't, I don't know what the notice said, but I'm not sure that the notice provided notice to the public that board members would be in attendance. That's
Well,
the difference.
So,
Because
Yeah.
again,
so between now and Thursday, we can make that happen, right?
no, it's gotta be 7 days.
But we can make it happen for the next one.
Okay.
Because this is just the second meeting.
Okay.
Right.
And that may be something that we may want to think about just for the future, because, again, that is policy and budget is where our elected authority lies. So I just,
And they have so many committees, have I been in the wrong committee
No,
meeting?
you don't have to.
Okay, different.
Yeah,
group.
you were on the
Cap-
budget committee the last time.
Okay, that's so many, capital outlays, what I'm
Year
going
before
to.
last.
That's something.
that's when they got us the financial.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm back with everybody now, that's it.
Okay. Okay, so go ahead and proceed with your report.
Okay, so just quickly, some of the items that were discussed in the last budget committee that we tried to bring forward and actually put dollars to. The first concern was the substitute budget. There was a concern from several of the members that teachers didn't have, that there wasn't enough substitute funding at the different schools, that teachers weren't being able to take off time. And so we just brought forward some information that the sub-budget actually was increased this past year by close to $250,000. the way that the substitute budget's allocated, it's allocated on a weighted FTE, so it's, previously it was $40 per weighted FTE, it was bumped up to $47. Basically, for every 50-cent increase to the substitute budget, it's about $17,000. So we were gonna bring that information back to the budget committee so that they have it. Naomi's actually going to bring to the committee by school who spent their entire budget for substitutes and who didn't, so that the committee can look at that. Did I miss anything there? I think there was a question on substitute, on the basic training for substitutes, and that it wasn't being offered anymore, but with working with HR, we found out that it's actually being offered online, and that's why the class isn't being offered anymore. So we're gonna take all that information back to the budget committee. Another concern from the budget committee was additional reading coaches. So outside of the reading categorical allocation, they wanted a full-time reading coach at every school. And that total cost was about, it was close to $1.5 million to put a full-time at every elementary through high school to have a full-time full-time reading coach. Some other concerns were they wanted more support and expansion of the pre-K program. And so we worked with early childhood and we got a list of the additional kind of items that they needed. I think the curriculum changed for early childhood a couple of years ago, but they haven't had a chance to update the curriculum, so they provided us with a spend plan over the next couple of years of items they need. Also, some of the classrooms still need to be updated. The furniture and equipment in, I think, 5 classrooms has yet to be updated, so they provided that information. And we're gonna bring that back, and we're trying to come up with just like an annualized spend that we could allocate if that's something that that everyone was interested in. Another concern was concern about flexible spending and looking, because particularly at Title I schools, they don't have access to some of the additional flexible spending that some of our other schools have. And Roseanne actually came up with the idea of doing a separate allocation and basing it on the percentage of free and reduced meals. So we came up with an allocation plan and a grouping and what that would look like if we set aside like $500,000 and what that would look like as far as additional spend for each, or additional flexible funds for each school. I think we talked about this the last time we talked about the budget committee, but we also talked about a marketing director and looking at funding that additional position. And I think that's
That's about to get advertised, so y'all know and aren't surprised. Lonnie's gonna pay for that. Coordinator. That's just information on budget.
But those were the lists. There was a lot of talk in the committee, but it was just like high level. There weren't any specifics. So we went back through the minutes and tried to pick out the items that were talked about in the committee that could actually be funded. Like there was a lot of talk about, giving teachers more flexibility over classroom learning. That's not something that I can necessarily like tie a dollar to or provide through the budget. So we tried to go back through and pull out the items that did actually have a cost.
Let me ask, I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna ask, could we know a little bit more, perhaps later, if not, it's not the appropriate time, about the marketing position and what that person's gonna be doing? Probably will not come from this.
I can talk about that just because I've been working with Dr. Gale on it, and
So,
we're working on a job description and that kind of
All right.
stuff. So I'd be happy to talk about it, but.
Okay, well, go ahead, Chris, fine.
That's the list that we're gonna be bringing back, and then the committee was asked to kind of go back to their peer groups and come back with more suggestions. Since it was the first meeting, it was kind of a, here's, what we're looking at. Session had just ended, and so we didn't really have numbers, so it was really a high-level conversation about different types of things, different types of needs, areas that they'd like to see, expansion and that kind of thing. So we're also gonna be talking about whatever they bring back to us.
Okay.
Please, go.
So, if I may, Madam Chair, with what we have seen, or has been most recently reported to us about school achievement, student achievement, particularly at the Title I schools, how exactly does how exactly are remedies for that manifest in the budget? Most simply, if we, my granddaddy always said, if you want to know a person's values, look at their checkbook. If we want to stem the tide of what we describe as achievement at those schools, it's going to require a financial investment beyond, we can't have unfunded mandates or strategies for improvement of those Title I schools when we know that those schools are not centers for entrepreneurship because they're not raising money through lunch or after-school activities. We're also agreed to make an investment already in a longer school day, but we realize it's going to require even more. So I don't know how, because I know that's although it's one of my priorities, it's a shared priority for all of us. So how exactly does whoever provides management of those activities, particularly our elementary schools and our middle schools and our high school, particularly our elementary schools where we see them at the bottom 300, how then does the remedy for that, how does that manifest in the budget? Does the assistant superintendents, crawl, how do they make recommendations to the budget about what those schools need so that they can remedy the problem? Bond, who has this large population of Congolese students who will also be tested, does that come from them? Does that come from us? Does that come from the superintendent? How is that? Because it requires money. We can't have unfunded mandates. We want you to improve the school, but they don't get the money to do it. So how does that happen? And I'm sorry.
You're looking at the wrong person to tell you the answer to that question.
In terms of, we keep talking about strategic plan. So, Daryl, this is a great example of something that's not going to be fixed in a year. It may not ever be fixed, but it's something that we should have in long. There are certain things that we can't remedy 100%. We just can't do it. But we can move the needle, right? If we set a strategic plan and have goals along the way of the exact things that you're talking about, moving. So hiring a marketing, that is that's a quicker fix than it is to make some of the improvements that come from generational poverty that we're trying, So I think that's something that we need to, again, go to a strategic plan. So I'm right there with you. How do I incorporate improving teacher salaries? So this is, and I'll show you guys, you can't really see, but I'll show you what I'm looking at here. I've said it since the day I got here. This is year after year after year. The yellow line are teacher salaries in Leon County. The gray line is the average teacher salary in the state of Florida, okay? So this is, so you can see where Leon is. This is 17-18. You can see where Leon is. You can see the state average. That is 15-16 maybe. We are not making movement, okay? Here we are. Our teacher salaries and our state average. So much like what Daryl said, this is something that I want to, when I leave the Leon County School Board, I want us to be above that gray line in teacher salaries. And how do we get there? So this is something that I think we need to be talking about. These are long-term things, much like what Daryl, let's make some movement. We're not going to move that yellow above the gray in 1 year, okay? But we can set this as a strategic goal, and this is something that very visibly, this is 4 years in a row. 4 years in a row, we've made no movement, none.
And our problem with that, this is the conundrum, right? We have the limited budget. We basically got $75 per FTE more this year, right? The rest of it is already categorically spent. So that $75 per FTE, where to be spent? Because, and we have a huge teacher, I'm totally with you on the salary thing like that. But we also can't bleed students because that, fits our budget even more. So that's our emphasis on marketing. Let's not lose our students because those are our FTE. The Title I, the Title I funding, it's distributed. There are a lot of schools. There are schools that have 60% pre-reduced lunch. 60. They get no Title I funding, but they've got all those kids that are eligible, just like the kid at Title I school, there's just more of them in one school than another. So, the whole equity thing, this is huge. And unfortunately, we've not been given the funds to solve all these problems. So it's I don't know, it's a conundrum. And
It
the
is a
Title,
contract.
and the Title, and we have a Title I committee. My thing is, we should say to them, if you could have one thing off of your list to help Title I, what would it be? And really listen to that recommendation.
But we can't kick the can.
Well, I'm saying, let's find out, what is it and how much would it cost? Because there's a lot of, there's science to show that, research, you know, who knows, research, but that to move the needle on teachers, you have to, it's like a $10,000 thing. To get a person to leave their comfort zone and go to, a Title I school or a more difficult school, you're talking $10,000 a teacher. So, is that where we want to put the money? You know, I mean, and I'm saying that's research I read 5 years ago, so I don't know if that's still true.
And whatever we decide has to be sustainable, right?
And it has to be backed up by whatever we're doing, has some research in it to say we don't want to just be throwing money to things that sound good, feel good, but don't really move the needle either on salary or make a difference in Title I schools or.
But you know, I'm hearing, and I hear you, and I agree, there's not been that kind of movement in Title there should be. But I'm also hearing Daryl and my voice and yours, Roseanne, in how do we get there? Who makes the decision? What we're doing right now? We see that is not enough. So what are we going to do to give them the dollars that we've got to make certain that the Title I children get what they need so that the kind of academic achievement can be met? And I hear the academic side of this, and I hear that we only have a few dollars, but it's making a decision that perhaps it does come back to the strategic plan, but that seems almost like pie in the sky. The right nowness of this with where we are when we're talking about what we're gonna be doing next year, you know? That's how I'm feeling and hearing. So I'm hearing three different things. We've not moved teacher salaries. It's been like that for 4 years. I'm hearing how, again, do we get this on the ground level so that we can service, again, the students that need it to increase academic achievement. And then I'm hearing, what did you just say about the success is based on the,
I just said that it's difficult. When I remember the Title I teacher, saying that, and I'd like to have a list of them to look at it, but it's teacher attrition, right? They get teachers, they sort of get them trained in the whole how you teach these children, and then as soon as a vacancy comes, they move. How do you keep them? And I believe that was their number one thing.
Right.
yeah, it
Well,
was.
one of the-
Teacher retention, so what do we
Right,
do?
and I think when we talk about increasing teacher salary, one of the ways we can do that is by incentivizing, teaching in Title I schools.
Again,
Right.
we can do that again, we're
Right.
back to that. We
But I
will
mean,
get
I'm talking
right
about,
now.
but I'm talking
Yeah.
about a legitimate incentive for teaching in a Title I school such that your master teachers across the district, those principals will have access to the best qualified teachers in the district, because working in our Title I schools, providing that compensation will then provide, those principals at Title I schools access to staff who would not ordinarily teach at their districts because of the extra lift. And so, and we have seen enough, I wouldn't mind, FSBA perhaps weighing in on this from their perspective in terms of where they've seen that work. If it does work, there is something for us to consider. But that could be one of the ways we talk about raising the bar, right? But I guess and I just don't want us to put off that, well, it's culturally, that you always, no, there is a remedy. And it is sustainable support for those Title I elementary schools. We've already made some important investment, but now we need to make sure that we support even more the expansion of early learning, because we realize that it's preparation for kindergarten that creates those lifelong learners.
Absolutely.
We'll see in 4 years, we'll see the change in third grade. In 7 years, we'll see the change in middle school because of the investment we make now. So There are methods to it, but what I want to make certain of is that those methods and those best practices inform our budget moving forward, because we've got to make improvements there. We just can't kick the can and say like, oh, well, you know, what you just said, we have with you always. No, we ain't going that route. Yeah, they just will always be
Yeah,
there.
we can't
Because because we are the remedy to end cyclical poverty.
Well, and we can't do it by ourselves,
No.
is what I would say. I mean, that's, as you know, I think Alva's serving on the Children's Services Council, I'm serving on the thing for the purpose-built community, and then I will be coming to us next meeting, so I just want to say that, to try to work with other community partners, the hospitals, the business community, because, you know, the jobs, you know, as you've always said, J-O-B, that's the way out of poverty. And so the schools, it's about, we've got such high toxic stress in our schools that, you know, that's the reason teachers aren't staying there. You know, it's toxic stress, and so are we gonna work on programs to help our kids learn those social emotional skills? Are we gonna get more counselors? Are we gonna raise salary? I mean, it's a big,
It is a big problem.
But when we look at the money, because we want to say we were to incentivize my teachers and say, well, not making money. That money's not there, it's here out of nowhere. So where is it in our budget that we can cut? What is it that's there that we're not, and this is why I rant against the payouts to these athletic directors. Sorry, absolutely, it makes me sick to my stomach. That money could be put in teacher salaries. This is why, you know, I'm fighting this, while I love the nonprofits and I want to give to them and I want to support them, we're doing it very haphazardly with no legitimate process. That is money that can either be processed to give to them in a direct way or given to our teachers. So we keep looking at these, you guys see Movie Dave, President, you know, but I'm gonna pull that clip and we're gonna play it one day. He's faking the president. He goes through the budget, the federal budget, and finds all this money spent into this homeless thing. But it's a comical few minutes, but it's very poignant in that we've got to find it somewhere. And is there a way, you know, in the longer term, that we can actually make these changes that we want to make? So whether it be incentivizing teachers in Title I, which would give us both. So that would incorporate things that we're all concerned in. I mean, I think it's a great idea.
That may be where we go, once we get down to voting about this, but I would warn us in this way. If we go that route and incentivize teachers, I think there needs to be a cap on the number of years. Wait a minute, let me say that differently. Teachers may get there and discover that they can't do it. They get trained, they get whatever else they need, and then they leave. And our children are left there still with what they have got now. That does not sound just right. But my point is, I think we need to think very carefully about how we contract these folk to go to these low-performing schools so that it's not just for the money, okay? I would hate to think that I'm just gonna go there and I'm gonna make me an extra $10,000 for the next 4 years and I'm gone. Another whole conversation with other folk in the room about how teachers would be selected to go and vetted to make sure that the compassion and that kind of need, that they hold that particular skill set and values to be a part of going there. Because I think anything less than that causes the kind of trouble that could be in a system that we're starting to feel now.
well, we're not the only people, I guess, in the world dealing with this. I mean,
No, we're not.
everybody's dealing with it, so we ought to go.
And that's why I said LSBA
Yeah,
is
we ought to
important.
go and say, who's
And I'm
been-
not talking about this year.
Yeah.
This is a long-term conversation.
who's been successful?
Right.
And I asked that, if you remember, to Nicole Patton-Terry, who was a researcher at FSU, really brilliant woman that's come in, and I think she's met a lot of you. What's the research say? You know, where can we actually move the needle? Is it, because like I said, what I read seemed so beyond our reach to add $10,000 to some people's salaries and not to others, you know, but how do we, what are we there?
And I think
Is
we
that what we want?
I think we look back in this district too, to see at those times when this particular idea was tried,
Yeah, I remember.
did it work then?
It didn't.
It didn't work. Why didn't it work? So if it didn't work then, what's
All I
different
can-
now?
all I can
Are the
just say is-
children different?
All I can
No.
just remember is the licensed school.
Okay.
And we brought in a principal from Jacksonville, paid her a $10,000 bonus for coming,
And
and
some
she lasted
others
about a
were
year
here.
and a half, 2 years, they're gone.
Exactly.
Same thing happened at NIMS.
Okay.
We brought in,
So let's-
you know, persons
You don't have to go outside the county.
So,
No,
We got.
but you know, it's not, you know, I'm AME, and in the AME church, we have what we call itinerant preachers. You serve at the discretion of the bishop, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to remain an AME preacher, the bishop has the wherewithal
To move
to
you.
send you where you will best serve the district. Because at the end of the day, it's the best interest of the district that matters most. So for example, you take a school, you take my school, you take my District 3. I'm just gonna use this as a great example. Bond needs strong leadership. You've got high-performing principals like, say, Demetria Clemens or Christopher Small, who've done a great job at their Title I school. So we don't have to, we got the skill, right? But then but the superintendent can move them, right? He runs operations and management.
That's
right?
his job.
Because their move is in the best interest of the district. Right, because we want that school, if leadership makes a difference, right, and you've already gotten proven leaders, then you move them to the best interest of the district.
Proven leadership, season to serve, that matters the most, and we're in trouble right now for not listening to my opinion, some folk who's out there, you know? No, but the matter the most, the greatest number, how we gonna serve them? No, I think this is a real conversation to have.
it is. I have a question just for process purposes and time purposes. You've written down we have a written list here of things that people wanted to say, and we've really just got it, 5 minutes ago, so you haven't probably even had a chance to read other people's things. Would it be helpful to you all just to go over them?
I
Each
think
person?
so, just so we know what they mean, so that when we're discussing it, we make sure that.
Sure, that's great. Y'all take it. Are we recording this?
Joe's recorded, we got the Democrat here recording, and we got the Scott's recording.
Oh, Scott's recording over there?
Oh,
That's his
a
camera in the
Democrat?
back, smile, that's Scott's.
Hello, Democrat.
No, he's not Democrat.
No, CD.
Hold up your hand, Democrat. See that? Hold up your hand, Leon County School, that's Jalexville.
Okay, so, how about if we each read ours out and just explain what we meant to, and let's start at the bottom, since I've been talking a lot. So, board member Strickland?
Teacher salary, here we go. So yes, I did, and I try to keep mine minimal, because there's just, it gets overwhelming, and we all have a lot. Again, brought my visual graphic aid here.
That was pretty.
Thank you.
That was pretty cool,
Right?
I must admit.
Well, what I didn't show you, what I didn't show you was, this is the principal salary. I'm going to. So, and that's all on the DOE website. I did not create this. You just go and then download it as an Excel and sort it, and there it is. So this is not an immediate fix. Money's gotta come from somewhere, and then a major is a big number. But again, I'd like to, and it's a long-term plan, and I don't know what we give. I don't know what do we exchange? Where does that money come from? What do we give up for that? And I know superintendent's made a lot of priorities over the years. It was, there was money put into extracurriculars, so parents wouldn't have to pay. There was money put into substitute salaries, which was great. They don't, those poor people, that's the hardest job ever. There was bus drivers or guidance counselors, so, and I know this is the largest number of employees. I mean, this affects so many people, so it's just something I can't ever continue to support enough. And then again, that ties right into that is that approved process and I actually, there's missing a word here. I said approved process or deletion of funding out to agencies. I would like CHSB has a process, so Children's Service Council is about to have a process, United Way has a process. I think the school district needs to get out of the business of funding nonprofits. And I am one, so it pains me to say that. We don't receive money from them, just for the record, but we need to fund our teachers, we need to fund our schools, and I would like to see this, go by the wayside, and let's hand it to somebody who knows how to do it, because it is an extremely in-depth process.
with outcomes and grant reporting and ROI, and I don't think we want any part of that. So, those would be my two, just, I mean, I could go on and on.
I want to mention, when Mr. Maddox, when we brought this up, and he was at one of our meetings, said that they, at the foundation, have a form that people fill out, and they at least, and then when they get money from the foundation, they fill out just a report. And I'm so with you on this. Anybody, and in fact, if you look at my priorities on there, is that we give money outside of the school system, that we have a process where they apply every year, they give us their outcomes, they come back and report their outcomes, and then we decide the next year are we going to be funded or not, so that it's not willy-nilly. And there aren't that many anymore, because I think it's been shrunk down quite a bit.
But there's never been, if we open the door, it would be, so you saw it at Coca, you saw what it was like, and that was just ours. So do we really want to be part of that world where we give out, money? And it's tough, we don't have enough money, and here we go back to, where are our priorities? What are our priorities? And if we really, if they take dollars, which they do, we've got to find those dollars somewhere. And this to me would be the first place to go. Not that these aren't all great programs, because they are, but you fund one, you need to open the door to a legitimate grant application process. That means a staff person over it, and that means looking at outcomes. So, I mean, at some point, we're either gonna have to make that, I would prefer we make that decision, yes, we're gonna do it, we're gonna have a legitimate process, or no, we're gonna stop doing that altogether and let somebody take
But
it. That would be my
you just
preference.
can't sweep that aside, because there are a great number of innovative, not-for-profits that provide worthwhile services to supplement the activities that are provided in school.
That we can't do.
That we either don't do, or they provide, or they're done in a facility outside. I just wouldn't, I know we don't have a great deal of money, but we can't, if we want our children served, we can't come humming and bumming and ask people to just do it and not provide some compensation. So I think you just can't, I just wouldn't want a blanket dismissal of all innovation that meets the needs of our children outside of the school district that we think is worthwhile in funding. And I think we vet them, and the way we vet that, or make that determination, is through a competitive process, by virtue of what priorities we have set for our school district, would determine which activities we would participate in.
And certainly, I would say it the same way if I could, but I'll say it this way because I can. I think that it is important that we maintain as much of a contact with our constituents as possible. Now, that seems very small, I guess, in the minds of some, but to have them not be able to get to us as a board or to come to us, I just find that not to be something that I would approve of, and I've only got one vote. So I'm still listening for how we maintain that opportunity for the public to get to us. We are their school board, and I want them to have an opportunity to see that. Why, yes, we have a process in place, but still not to cut them off from us and being able to share what it is they need and their ideas and have them ask. So that's where.
I have one question about Alba's question. Can we get a breakdown, and I know y'all already know this, I'm sure people in the room know this, what it costs per, percent? So if you give everybody in the district a 1% raise or 2% raise, what money are we looking at? So when we get the budget, we can see. I know we can't do things ahead of bargaining, just say we're gonna put aside this much for that, but at least we would know generally what kind of costs will.
If I may amend that, would you be willing to consider what would be a cost of living increase, such we don't pick an arbitrary percentage, such that it's genuinely, demonstrative, that it is genuinely impactful?
Sure.
Is that not the standard by which we?
What the cost of living increase is measured right now. We're allowed to do that, I
Right,
know,
we can
without
look at it.
going through the bargaining, without going through.
That's why I was saying something different than just 1 or 2, arbitrarily 1 or 2%, but I know usually cost of living increases are above 3%.
No.
Now,
Isn't it? Is it the money? I don't know.
I just
I'm
use
not
that
expert
as
on
a
that.
lower than.
It's like 1.2.
Cost of living?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what the legislature did away with, in our retirement system. It used to be an automatic 3% every year, and they changed that to cost of living increase because it's much, much lower. So people who retired after some of us did, got that unfortunate, it's a huge thing, to get 3% every year, that people would be thrilled with that, I'm pretty sure.
And keeping, with Alva's point about teacher salaries, I think you will notice from our sheet here of our priorities, I believe each one of us have mentioned the importance of overall salary increases for anybody. So for Leon County, for the Democrat, and for Scott, that's pretty noteworthy.
Yeah.
As we continue to talk about that, we all want that, okay? So that, and I suspect safety, but that's paramount, okay?
Member Jones, you brought up the list.
I'm concerned about my Congolese students at Bond. I want to make certain that they're not just, that they don't just have translators. Those children are taught for as long as they're in our community. I know I have them at Bond. I think they may be in other schools in our school district. I want us to do what we have to do to make the investment in the hiring and the recruitment of teachers to teach those children, to create an environment, one where they'll also be integrated amongst the general student population to understand the maturation that comes through socialization. But I want to make certain that the children are taught. Okay. As it relates to early learning, and I'm not entirely sure, Jillian is here, she can help. When we made that investment in early learning, right, to expand the day, you don't have to, okay, because it seems like we're so informal, right? It's kind of cool. But I gotta stand there. I'm Byron chocolate. I done ate about 30 pieces of candy. So I made a meal of it. But when we expanded the day, how many children will that ultimately impact?
I don't have an answer.
You know what, I'm sorry, that's the wrong question.
So I can get that for you though. So
But
you-
what I'm interested in, I know we already provide a full day of early learning for our ESC students, correct?
That's correct.
And then, so when we made the investment of however much it cost for us to expand it to provide a full day for other children, are we now, so is that open to all children to attend those schools, or the target populations that we, I know we're doing that at our Title I centers, but I want to know that all possible children are being served is what I wanted to know.
So I would say to be very transparent, pending seats available, right?
Okay.
Now they're live right now. What?
Okay.
So for example, we're really talking about pre-K4, right? So pre-K3, there's pre-K3 and pre-K4. Pre-K3 is 100% ESE, with the exception of one school which has a pre-K3 classroom that's a fee-based program that's separate. But 90% of our schools all have a pre-K3 that's 100% ESE. Then we have at our elementary schools, all of them have a pre-K4 classroom. Within that pre-K4 classroom, there are ESC students and there are non-ESC students. It's an inclusion model. And so at those schools, in the past, those children who did not need 6 or 7 hours of instruction would have to go home. So we are paying for all day pre-K4 at the Title I schools. So that doesn't mean that we are adding 2 more classrooms of pre-K4. So if the classroom has space for 18 students, then right now, let's say they're at 14, we'll be adding space for 4 more children. If the classroom only has space for 12 students, then, and they're at 12, then we don't have any seats available and we'll start a wait list or consider opening another class. We do run into facilities issues because there is such a need in the community, and this is where our Leon Linked and the partnership that we're working with Ms. Bruner on is critical, because there are so many more children than we have space available. And so we have several schools that we have wait lists for the pre-K 4 classroom who are reg ed. The ESC students, of course, because of IDEA, they receive their services, and so they may not be at their home zone school because of capacity, but we will find a seat for them and provide transportation for those students. But the VPK all day, that pre-K all day program that you're referencing, is really speaking to continuing the educational services for the regular ed students who historically had to leave to the end of the school day. And so it will vary, the number will vary based on the spaces available at each of the elementary schools.
What do you estimate?
It's just, I don't have an estimate. I was not prepared to answer that question. I can get an answer in the next time we meet, but.
Dr. Gill, can we include that as a continuing concern, the implications of our extended VPK program? It could be at our next workshop, at our next agenda review. That's cool. Perhaps we could talk about what that looks like, because I think one, that's going to be sustainable, so that will be captured in the next budget, correct?
It is part of federal programs, Title I. It is not part of this budget process.
Right,
So
the
we
budget
use
that we
Title
were talking
I
about.
monies to support that.
Yes, sir, we do.
Okay.
Yes, sir, we do. And so it is our plan to continue, as I stand before you today, without feedback from the state of Florida on our federal program plan submission, we intend to continue to expand and support and strengthen pre-K for our students in Title I. We want to close the gap, if one exists, before they enter in kindergarten.
Exactly.
And
So, as you describe it now, we anticipate having a waiting list moving forward at all of our locations. I want us to be at capacity enrollment, and I want to make certain that the way we're investing the money, all eligible children, that the eligible children that we can support I want to know that we will be at full capacity, that's all.
It would surprise me if we were not at full capacity, because our program is so small. And so, right now where we sit in July, I met with Ms. Bruner last week, I think we still have 500 more students to screen for the beginning of this school year. So there is certainly interest, people in the community are reaching out to us and asking for their children to be screened so that they can receive a seat in one of our pre-K programs. And I can say quite affirmatively that we do not have 500 open slots, and at neither the Title I or the non-Title I schools. So we will wind up having a wait list. We have schools with wait lists already. True story, my son is on a wait list. And so we have wait lists everywhere.
Now, what I've included in what I've described, increased early learning support and best practices for professional development for our early learning faculty and staff. I don't know if I quite put it like that. What I would like for us to do, because Leon County Schools is the subject matter expert for education, I want us to, in some way, like we've done the Title I conferences, perhaps do I want the industry of early learning to harness the intellectual capital found in the school district such that everyone would operate in the industry at our level. And I think that if we were to work in cooperation with the Early Learning Coalition, that we would be the ones who would tell the industry what they need to be teaching in terms of curriculum that will inform. So if they're not served by us, they're still served by us because we provided the standard.
Absolutely. And so we've begun that process and opened those lines of communication. We began at the end of June. We had a conference where we were able to provide invitations to private pay providers to attend and look at how, and really just listen to see how we look at data, how we look at expectations for kindergarten readiness. We have a plan in place, and I believe in either August or September, there's a plan for us in early childhood to report back to the board in terms of quarterly meetings with parents. We're looking for business partnerships to help support us with those kinds of things. Professional development for teachers, our own teachers, and professional development in leveraging and building relationships. We really want to we want to be seen as a partner with our early childhood community in Leon County. We don't want to have a finger wagging. We want to link arms, which is the Leon Linked Way.
Because you know they're mad, I understand. The
So
private providers are upset because they think we're going to be taking their children.
There is a yes. And again, it's because this idea that because we are VPK all day, we're not early childhood centers. We don't have hundreds of pre-K students on campuses. We're talking about 1 or 2 students. The benefit being that the parents of children who have siblings at a school their children don't have to leave at 12 o'clock. They can stay all day and ride the bus home with their sibling and those kinds of things. But Ms. Bruner has been working diligently with community members. I do know that of at least 2 instances where she's spoken to people. And then we also have a meeting with Dr. Brown coming up in the next week or so. Dr. Rita Brown from Brownsville. So we're working with her.
To your ideas,
Yes,
bringing
ma'am.
in an idea, but I don't want to interrupt.
Yes, please.
We talked about it one time, and I just think we should move toward it with of having a Leon County Gold Seal of Approval
Yes, ma'am.
thing that these preschools, private preschools could put in their window.
We are
and
working towards that as well.
I think
So,
that would be great.
as Ms. Banks mentioned, the state of Florida adopted new VPK standards in 2016 or 2017. We are still in the process of rolling those out and implementing them with fidelity internally. And so as we move forward with that in the same way, in the same manner, but maybe slightly behind, we are working with professional development on those standards for private providers so that they know. And then at the same time developing that blue ribbon, that gold seal, the purple eagle, something to provide a designation for a school that has met these standards. But that we intend that part to be brought back to you probably next spring, realistically.
And the question that I asked relative to what that enrollment is, if you say if Dr. Gill already has y'all slated to present to us on early learning and BPK in August, then you can bring that question, that response back to us then, or you can email it to me or to us, however you like to do it. I'm just interested in knowing that, but I'm glad to know that you're going to that early learning will be on deck to provide workshop information for us.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. My last of my budget stuff is, I want us to do, as we talk about spending money, I want us to talk about equitable technology in Title I schools. When we go to Mumford tomorrow, right, although a newer school, right, the technology found there compared to what I find when I go to Pineview or at Oak Ridge or
Riley.
in the Tharp Street corridor, right? I want us to talk about what that looks like in terms of the impacts of that, such that teachers are armed no matter where they teach with the same level of technology to provide teaching experiences. And then I want I want us to talk about how we support our Title I schools to repair the achievement gap for lower performing schools. I know it's gonna take a great deal, but we're not gonna sit idly by and just watch those schools continue to go into disrepair. So I wanna make certain that those are my budget priorities.
Thank you.
Ms. Bellin? Yes, ma'am, Madam Chair. My number 2 is my number 1. Continue to promote all measures to ensure optimal district safety and security. If that means putting more monies for our officers, then there. But related to that is to increase funding to hire additional counselors. And that really is number 1 on this paper. But I think that's really important because many of our children, as you already know, are exhibiting some behaviors where they need some FOREA counseling. And I'd also like to have it workshopped so that we can know where the counselors are that we recently acquired from, I forgot the name of the agency. This Village. The number is This Village. The numbers, where they are, what they're doing, what their duties are, the students, just a breakdown about that. So the number 3 thing is especially important, I think, to our suspension and expulsion rates. I want to reinstitute and expand the restorative justice program. As far as I'm concerned, it was working wonderfully at Griffin. At one point, under the leadership of Dale Landry, and I attended a couple of those training sessions. I believe that there might be some data to suggest that the number of expulsions and suspensions decreased when though that program was there. I'd like to see it expanded. So I don't know what monies would be involved to bring that staff in to do that at Griffin and eventually at Riley. But I would love to see that happen. Again, I think anything that we can do to help our teachers and our students stay in place and behave in a way and that would cause us to have a more, I hate to say a friendly working environment in our schools, but in our classrooms, I think that it would help. And again, it would be helpful to the community as well. Of course, I've already talked about optimizing salaries for all district employees. Everybody wants more money. Everybody ought to be paid better, particularly if they are performing outstandingly, and of course, many of them are. So, I'd love to have that happen. Further implement strategies to serve to increase parental involvement. I'm not sure what there is out there that we're even doing to have that be one of the strategic plan goals, but I think we ought to be about that business. I know at one point, and perhaps this is not even part of the budget process, there was that grandparents program. I think that's not even, we still do that a little bit. And that was a program that helped us even with some order, and I'll just call it what it was, order in some of our schools. So that piece, I think, yeah, we're still funding it, but to increase it, because I think right now we only have one grandmama over at, is that Riley, I think, or, and so take a look at that, just to see how we might all pull all of this together in a hand and glove kind of effective piece so that the programs that we offer, our children can learn and benefit from them and they can feel safe. I think that's just a bird's eye view of really where I want to go with that.
Since Dee Dee's not here, I'll just read it out loud. Continue focus on district safety and security, continued partnership with Peace Team. And then for mine, for raises for all groups, implement restorative justice and staff training programs for schools with the highest suspension rates, ensure adequate counseling services in all schools. Let's say that I had, just by chance, a meeting today with OASIS. And they're providing, at no cost to the district right now, girls' circles at, I think she said 9 of our schools, and they're having a lot of success working with girls with communication skills. And that's through one of those HS, what do you call that grant you mentioned before? The CHS, that's through a CHSP grant. Now, that funding is getting, shrinking, and I was surprised about it. I didn't know that they were offering in our schools. I said, what we needed, and that sort of leads to my other point, is if we're gonna fund things, then we need, and if we're getting things for free, we ought to know about it, because maybe that's something we should expand, add on to what's already successful, is my point, not bring in this program, that program, the other program, because it's somebody's pet. Let's see, what's got proven data to show it worked, and then expand that. And then I've talked a lot about, getting a market coordinator and some marketing. It's, there's a lot of things a person could do, but I think, just informing our community of the things we're going on in our schools and trying to, we were talking at a meeting beforehand to talk about this, getting hooks in our elementary that make them want to go to their zone middle school, and make them want to go to their zone high school, and we can target that, and maybe we can bring back over 5,000 children right now that are going to homeschool and other places, because for some reason they aren't coming to our public schools. So think, not only is that revenue generation for everybody, but it's also just building up that community feeling of the public school. So having said that, I've got the notes and.
How you make all that happen?
Make it
I know.
happen.
Magic wand.
Just create a bunch of money, because we have a lot of things we want to get done.
Right.
But we understand that you can't do it all at one time. And look forward to, at some point having a presentation to say, here's how we're going to try to tackle this, or to one bite out of the elephant at a time. And we'll have we have several budget meetings coming up, so would you just review those with us? What the process is from here forward before we approve the final budget?
Well, we had our tax roll what's certified on July 1st, so that's kind of the beginning of the whole process for us. We'll be back with the tentative budget, I believe, the 23rd. And,
Let's have at least 3.
On the 23rd.
right. And then we'll have the public hearing on it on the 30th.
So you give me what?
The public hearing the 30th, the following week.
Don't we have a outline of that already?
Yes.
It's on our
Yeah.
calendar.
It's on your calendar.
But I think it's important to understand, even after this is approving the general budget, there's still some ways we can move some things around up until when? When is sort of that final, okay, this is it for the year?
September, right? It has to be right, but they'll approve the budget. You have up until that final approval date, I think it's the 9th.
Kim, you were saying that there were some things that you all had already in the budget. Did you find any of what we said to be part of what you all had already planned out?
We don't have anything in the budget. These were things that were discussed in the first budget committee that we were bringing back, that we actually put dollars to, so that when the budget committee was discussing them, they had an idea about what they cost, because they were talking in such high, like at a high level.
Okay.
But what I will say is I do think that a lot of these are long-term goals, and we do need to look at, because we have limited funds, and the budget committee only looks at the general fund. They were only looking at the general fund and only looking at the new funding coming from the legislature. So nothing that we had previously funded. But I mean, the way to start maximizing some of this and start reaching some of these goals is to set these these plans in motion. These are our strategic goals. Maximize, look at all the funds available to us, the federal funds, the general fund, and start putting the money again, planning and trying to make these things happen throughout the different budgets, not just like looking at the general budget, but we need to make them a priority for all of the different budgets.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My only interest, I support the marketing position. My only concern is if you swap one person for another one person, that we may not have the impact anticipated for that position. I think it requires, for a district of our size, it requires more than one person. As many separate individual centers as we have, I just think that it requires more than that.
We just have to get started.
Yes, ma'am. I just want you to know,
Yeah.
I just think it's worth it for us to.
Yes, and we have some staff that we can maybe redirect with some leadership to, to really say, okay, this is our strategic plan, these are our strategic goals, this is what you focus on.
Okay.
And they'll do it too.
Can you put a question about the 3%? Obviously, the 3% required minimum reserves. Do we have, that's minimum, do we have a goal, what's your thought when you're coming into this?
Well, obviously, we want to be well above the 3%. I mean, we've talked, and we really want to be, like 4.5?
About 4.5.
At least. I mean, because we don't know what's gonna happen. I mean, and thinking about, looking at last hurricane season and just some of the storms we've been hit with already, I mean, 3% is scary. I mean, that's not anything when you think about our monthly payroll or I mean, it's just,
Sorry.
it's not enough.
Yeah, I think that's something important that we keep in mind as we move forward, that 3% is not where we should be, that's.
Right. It's the absolute minimum before the state steps in.
So then we'll know, once you gather in all the chips, the superintendent said,
Right.
and after you set aside the
Everything that we have to
percent,
spend.
then we'll know really what discretionary budget we have to.
Right.
And how to allocate.
We're working really, really hard to get as early as possible this year. I mean,
We'll have it earlier because we shut down spending
Right,
earlier.
we actually, I know, I'm trying to think of maybe a name, but we got.
Name.
I
Never think
know.
about it.
People say parking lot, I just don't. But it gets your numbers.
Okay.
What are you laughing at?
Oh, that's
But it, we had to, in order to get the budget, get these numbers earlier.
And could you, since the board members can't come to the budget meeting, could you please provide them with any charts or any information that you give to the budget committee so that they can see that? And then for the next budget committee, it could be advertising so that if they want to come and listen.
Definitely.
That sound good, y'all? Good. Okay, Linda, is there anything else good for the cause? Gail?
Just a reminder, tomorrow, we're at Mumford Middle School. Mumford Middle School. Please consider traffic. We will have a light dinner of, at 5:30, of pasta, salad, and rolls from 5:30 until like 5:55. But consider traffic, that's quite a trek.
I may be late because I had county commission, and I have an agenda item, but I'm not, and regrettably, I am at the very end of the agenda, so.
What is a big problem? Where you? Do we have Dee Dee tomorrow? Excuse me? Can we find out if Dee Dee's gonna be?
She said she'll be ready.
Is that her district?
No, that's fine.
That's your school.
And then we're here at Howell for the next two, both other agenda reviews, for July, correct?
Okay.
Here, we're here until, for the next one,
Oh, in 2 months?
because of benefits.
Okay.
Yes,
Through
ma'am.
through the beginning.
I
of school and
changed it,
everything.
I changed it. The location.
Yeah.
Okay, y'all.
I'll remind you.
Are we done here?
Yeah.
Should I make the gavel?
We got a picture, seriously.